We live in a country where Australians have screamed death to Jews in our streets, and this after 700 innocent Jewish people have been killed in Israel and hundreds of others are being held hostage, facing an unthinkable fate: execution, beheadings broadcast live on social media, possibly. Like most of you, I am disturbed about what's been happening in this country in the past 48 hours. I've been trying to fathom it. So I want to talk tonight about strength and weakness. When it comes to life, politics, national affairs, international diplomacy, strength gets a bad rap. Strength is often maligned. Strength is portrayed as aggressive, as hard-hearted. Weakness gets a better run. Weakness means giving in, and giving in is often applauded. It's often seen as being compassionate. The fastest way, the easiest way to end a war, for instance, is to surrender. But if you're right, if you're defending what's right, then surrender is unconscionable. Australia and border protection is a good example. Weakness on borders, the let all asylum seekers in approach, was portrayed so often by so many for so long as the compassionate option. It was clearly unsustainable. Borders are meaningless unless they're controlled, and this country could never accept all the people prepared to get on a boat and come here. But the weak were applauded as the caring, the compassionate. That weakness cost hundreds of lives, created torment for tens of thousands in detention, cost this country billions of dollars, and created turmoil on our maritime borders. Weakness can invite disaster. It often does. To save lives, to restore order, to protect our generous immigration system, we needed strength, personal and political strength. We did that. We learned that lesson twice, as it happens. We need strength against international foes, against internal threats, and we need to show strength in defending our values. And over the past 48 hours here in Australia, we've seen another pathetic manifestation of weakness. Our political leadership kind of had the right instincts in response to the unspeakable atrocities committed against Israel. They condemned the violence and they decided to light up the Opera House to display solidarity and empathy. That's the easy stuff. But then their weakness was exposed. They lacked the strength to stand up for our values. They allowed protesters ostensibly supporting Palestine, but actually celebrating Hamas terrorist depravity. They allowed these hateful bigots to dictate their own terms in our largest city. The police warned members of the Australian Jewish community to stay away from the light display at the Opera House to honour their country and their people. The police made this call in cahoots with the Labor state government. Stay home, they said to the supporters of Israel, the mourners of the victims. The police dragged away two people who dared to take Israeli flags to the city. The Israel supporters were threatened with arrest, while the police protected and supported people flying the flag of Palestine and cheering the bloodthirsty deeds of an evil Islamist terrorist group. The supporters of Hamas had their way in our city, and instead of honouring the victims, honouring the people of Israel, we saw Australians chanting for the death of Jews. I'll show you this, and I warn you, it's distressing. Chanting against Israel, against Australia, and against common decency.
Shame Israel!
Shame, shame Israel!
Shame, shame Australia!
Shame, shame Australia!
Shame, shame Albert!
Shame, shame Albert!
Now, this makes most Australians almost physically ill. Hamas terrorists shot and killed mothers, babies, children, unarmed women, grandparents and men. They deliberately targeted the unarmed and the vulnerable. They kidnapped others. They defiled and paraded the bodies of the people they murdered. Have a look at what one family faces as a result of these terrorists marauding Israeli homes.
Pillaging, destroying and hunting Israelis. Behind one house they find a terrified mother trying to protect her children.
It was very clear that this is my cousin, Shiri, and the two little children. Kfir is 9 months old and Ariel is 4 years old, being held by Hamas. There is blood on their blanket, there is blood on the kidnappers.
It wasn't just Yossi's cousin and her children. 3 generations of this family have been taken. Shiri and Yarden Bibas, their young sons Ariel and Kafir, and her father and mother, who has Parkinson's, kidnapped without her medication. Their relatives are beside themselves with worry.
My fears is that they separated them, that they killed them, that they are injured, that we won't see them again.
Beautiful little red-headed children, their mother and the grandparents. And on the streets of Sydney, people celebrated and chanted for more. The police and the New South Wales state government had ample warning before last night's pathetic surrender to the extremists, because as you know, we showed you last night, one leading imam led the charge the night before.
I'm smiling. I'm smiling and I'm happy. I'm elated. It's a day of courage. It's a day of happiness. It's a day of pride. It's a day of victory. This is the day we've been waiting for.
Just extraordinary. These people saying that, doing that in one suburb, where in neighbouring suburbs, Jewish Australians have to put up with those implicit threats. Yet the police, with the full cooperation and endorsement of the state government, the very next day handed over our streets to the Hamas supporters. Here's the police minister.
After the horrific events in Israel on the weekend, police were closely monitoring the situation and became aware through intelligence and through social media that large numbers could be expected to gather in the city. They needed to manage a highly volatile crowd, and again I say, last night they did that successfully.
No, they did not. That is pathetic. They surrendered the streets to the extremists, and the only people they arrested and dragged away were those supporters of Israel. That's what weakness looks like. And if you want to know what weakness sounds like, have a listen to the New South Wales Attorney General this morning.
I think everybody needs to just calm down and, as you say, do stay at home.
Well, what's the point in lighting up the sales of the Opera House and then telling Jewish people to stay home for their own safety?
I think all people should stay home for their own safety if the streets are unsafe. But
well, is New South Wales and Sydney unsafe?
Well, I'm confident that the police have got the streets under control, as they always do.
No, they do not. They have surrendered the streets to supporters of terrorism who they're not prepared to take on, despite their abhorrent motivation. Instead, the police took away law-abiding Jewish Australians. This is weakness writ large. Remember, these are the same police who enforced curfews against our citizens during COVID, who arrested people in parks and removed them from beaches. These police and these politicians were all too keen to scare the hell out of people during COVID and impose the most draconian and nonsensical rules under extraordinary powers. Yet when there's a real threat to our national cohesion and our status as a civilised nation, they go to water. This is the sharp end of political correctness. This is how the woke crusade ends up. The New South Wales police and government are so scared of confronting Islamist extremists, so scared of being accused of Islamophobia, that they end up enabling anti-Semitism, enabling a festival of hate and oppressing the victims. This is weakness. A country that does not understand how to defend its own values. The Islamist extremists on all continents are celebrating one of the most deplorable terrorist atrocities in history, spitting bile and hatred at Israel and Jewish people. They are inciting violence and spreading hate. But too few take them on. The political left especially is loath to condemn this rancid behaviour. Our politicians show weakness. Our police show weakness. Our schools, our universities, our public service, they all show weakness. If you only show weakness, you won't last. The extremists will have their way with you in the end. We need strength. Strength to defend our values, to live our values. We can't pretend it will all be okay. We can't always leave it to someone else. Now, I'm not normally into these light displays at public monuments, but the New South Wales and federal governments should put those lights up, those blue and white lights up on the Opera House for the rest of the month. And we should all get there night after night and pay our respects and show our solidarity, show our empathy for Israel, show our Australian values and show our strength.